The Forgotten Names of Eden. What if some of the most important people in the Bible were never fully talked about? When most people remember Adam and Eve, they remember the garden, the serpent, Cain, and Abel. But hidden behind those famous names is a mystery almost nobody speaks about: the daughters of Adam and Eve. Who were they? Why does Scripture barely mention them? And could these forgotten women have carried the first stories, traditions, and memories of humanity itself? The Bible gives only brief clues. Ancient writings like the Book of Jubilees whisper additional details. Together, they open a door into a world almost completely lost to history. We journey back to the beginning of mankind, to the first family ever created, and uncover the lives of the daughters born outside the spotlight of Genesis. Their story is ancient, emotional, and deeply connected to the survival of humanity itself. And before we enter the world beyond Eden, subscribe to The Thinking Faculty, because some of the greatest mysteries of Scripture are hidden in the verses most people skip. Now, let us return to the very first family on earth. The story of Adam and Eve did not end when they were expelled from the Garden of Eden. In many ways, it had only begun. Genesis describes the moment humanity stepped into a harsher world, a world of sweat, pain, labor, and death. Adam would work cursed ground. Eve would experience pain in childbirth. Yet even outside Eden, God allowed life to continue. Genesis 4 begins with the birth of Cain and Abel. Cain became a farmer. Abel became a shepherd. Their story would become the first tragedy in human history when Cain murdered his brother out of jealousy and anger. But after describing Abel's death and Cain's exile, Scripture suddenly becomes strangely quiet about the rest of Adam and Eve's family. Genesis 5:4 says, "After Seth was born, Adam lived 800 years and had other sons and daughters." That single sentence changes everything. Adam and Eve did not merely have 3 sons. Over centuries, they produced an enormous family. Sons and daughters were born generation after generation, while Adam himself was still alive. The Bible does not list most of their names, but ancient Jewish traditions attempted to preserve fragments of these forgotten histories. The Book of Jubilees, an ancient Jewish text written centuries before Christ, claims Cain's sister was named Awan, while Abel's sister was named Azura. Later, Adam and Eve would also have a daughter named Aklima, according to some traditions. Though these writings are not part of the biblical canon for most Christians, they reveal how ancient believers wrestled with the unanswered questions of Genesis. Where did Cain's wife come from? How did humanity multiply? The answer was uncomfortable to many modern readers, but obvious to the ancient world. Adam and Eve's sons married their sisters. In the earliest generations of humanity, there was no other option. This reality shocks many people today because later, biblical law forbade close family marriage. But in the beginning, humanity existed in a genetically pure state, much closer to creation itself. The laws against incest would come much later through Moses. The daughters of Adam and Eve therefore carried an enormous burden. Without them, humanity would end before it began. Yet despite their importance, their stories were buried beneath the shadows of their brothers. The Bible records Cain's violence. It records Seth's righteousness. It records Adam's age. But the women who gave birth to the nations of earth remained mostly unnamed. And perhaps that silence is exactly what makes their story so haunting. Because somewhere in those missing centuries lived the first mothers of humanity, women who remembered Eden itself. And according to ancient tradition, some of them carried memories that would survive long after Adam was gone. The Bible tells us Cain and Abel brought offerings before God. One was accepted, the other was rejected. But ancient tradition suggests there may have been more happening beneath the surface. The Book of Jubilees records that Cain's sister was named Awan, while Abel's sister was Azura. Some Jewish traditions even suggest conflict arose over marriage arrangements between the siblings. Though Scripture never confirms this directly, ancient interpreters tried to understand why Cain's anger burned so deeply before the murder. Genesis 4:5 says, "So Cain was very angry, and his face was downcast." Why such intense fury? Some believe jealousy extended beyond sacrifice into rivalry, inheritance, or relationships. Whether true or not, one terrifying fact remains certain. The first daughters of humanity witnessed the first murder in history. Imagine the horror. One brother lying dead in the field, another brother cursed by God. A grieving mother who had once walked in Eden, now burying her own child. The daughters of Adam and Eve would have experienced pain unlike any humans before them, because there had never been death before Abel. No funeral traditions existed, no graves existed, no language even fully existed for grief itself. Eve had already endured the loss of paradise. Now she experienced the loss of a son, and her daughters suffered beside her. Genesis focuses on Cain's punishment, but hidden in the background were sisters who watched their family fracture forever. Cain was driven eastward and eventually built a city. Genesis 4:17 mentions Cain's wife, but never names her. Ancient traditions consistently believed she was one of Adam and Eve's daughters or granddaughters. This was not scandalous to the ancient audience. It was simply necessary for survival. Human civilization itself depended on the daughters of Eve. These women became the bridge between Eden and the post-Eden world. Through them came families, languages, skills, agriculture, music, and generations yet unborn. Genesis 4 also records the rise of culture among Cain's descendants. Jabal became the father of nomadic herdsmen. Jubal became the father of musicians. Tubal-Cain forged bronze and iron tools. But behind every lineage were women whose names history barely preserved. Mothers, wives, daughters. Women who carried children while the memory of Eden still lingered in human minds. And perhaps most astonishing of all, Adam and Eve themselves were still alive during much of this expansion. According to Genesis, Adam lived 930 years. That means the daughters of Adam grew up hearing first-hand stories about the Garden of Eden itself. They may have heard Eve describe the serpent. They may have heard Adam describe the voice of God walking in the garden. The daughters of Adam were not far removed from paradise. They were only one generation away. And that made them living witnesses to humanity's lost beginning. When people think of Eve, they often think only of the forbidden fruit, but Scripture presents her as something far greater. Genesis 3:20 says, Adam named his wife Eve because she would become the mother of all the living, not merely the mother of sons, the mother of all humanity, including the daughters whose lives shape civilization itself. Eve's daughters would have learned directly from the first woman ever created. Imagine the knowledge she carried. She remembered untouched creation. She remembered animals before fear entered the world. She remembered life before pain, aging, and death. And perhaps most painfully, she remembered what humanity lost. The daughters born outside Eden likely grew up hearing stories about a paradise they would never see. A river flowing through the garden, trees filled with life, the presence of God walking among humanity. For them, Eden was both memory and tragedy. Ancient traditions often portray Eve teaching her daughters domestic skills, survival knowledge, and spiritual remembrance. While the Bible does not describe these moments in detail, the role of mothers in preserving culture throughout ancient history cannot be overstated. The daughters of Eve became the first keepers of human memory, before books existed, before scrolls existed. Stories survived through spoken words. And who often preserved family traditions in ancient households? Women. Mothers taught children. Grandmothers preserved memory. Daughters carried history into future generations. This means the forgotten daughters of Genesis may have played a central role in preserving humanity's earliest understanding of God. The tragedy is that ancient genealogies often focused almost entirely on male descendants. Women appeared only occasionally unless their role became politically or spiritually significant. Yet behind every genealogy stood mothers whose labor made those lineages possible. Even Seth, the righteous son born after Abel's death, came through Eve's endurance as a mother. Genesis 4:25 says, "God has granted me another child in place of Abel, since Cain killed him." Eve's words reveal unimaginable sorrow, but they also reveal resilience. She continued building humanity despite heartbreak, and so did her daughters. The world outside Eden was dangerous. Food required labor. Childbirth carried pain. Death had entered creation. Yet generation after generation, Adam and Eve's daughters chose life. They married. They gave birth. They buried loved ones. They endured suffering humanity had never experienced before. And they did all this while carrying the weight of a broken world that began with their own parents. The daughters of Adam and Eve were not side characters in history. They were the mothers of civilization itself. And according to some ancient traditions, one daughter in particular would become deeply connected to the righteous line through which Noah and eventually Abraham would come. Her name was Azura, and her story leads us deeper into the hidden world of Genesis. After Abel's death and Cain's exile, Genesis introduces another son, Seth. Genesis 4:26 says, "At that time, people began to call on the name of the Lord." This verse marks a turning point. While Cain's descendants built cities and advanced culture, Seth's line became associated with worship and spiritual remembrance. But here again, the Bible leaves silent spaces. Who became Seth's wife? Ancient tradition answers with a name, Azura. The Book of Jubilees identifies Azura as Seth's sister and wife. Together, they became part of the lineage through which Noah would eventually come. This detail may disturb modern readers, but in the ancient context, it represented humanity's only path forward. The Bible itself never hides uncomfortable truths. Instead, it presents humanity exactly as it was at the dawn of creation. Azura therefore becomes one of the most important forgotten women in biblical history. Through Seth's line came generations that preserved the knowledge of God in an increasingly corrupt world. Eventually, this line would produce Noah. From Noah would come Shem. From Shem would come Abraham. And through Abraham's descendants would eventually come Jesus Christ. That means one of Adam and Eve's daughters stood near the beginning of the messianic lineage itself, yet most people never hear her name. Genesis 5 records long lifespans that almost seem impossible to modern readers. Adam lived 930 years, Seth lived 912 years, Enosh lived 905 years. This means many generations overlapped simultaneously. For centuries, Adam himself could personally speak to his descendants. Imagine entire communities gathering to hear the first man describe creation. Imagine daughters teaching children what Adam and Eve told them about Eden. Humanity at this stage was still astonishingly close to its origin. Sin, however, was spreading rapidly. Cain's violence became a pattern repeated throughout the earth. Pride increased, corruption multiplied, and while men often dominate the visible narrative of Genesis, women silently carried the burden of survival beneath it all. They maintained households, raised children, preserved traditions, sustained communities. The daughters of Adam and Eve stood at the foundation of every human family that followed. And still, Scripture gives only passing glimpses of them. Why? Perhaps because Genesis focuses primarily on covenant history, the line through which God's redemptive plan unfolded. Yet, even within that focus, the hidden presence of women remains everywhere beneath the surface. Without daughters, there would be no generations. Without mothers, there would be no humanity. And without women like Azura, the righteous line itself could never continue. But darkness was growing across the earth. Soon humanity would become so corrupt that God would grieve over creation itself. And somewhere, among the daughters of Adam's expanding family, women watch civilization drift farther and farther from the memory of Eden. Why does the Bible say so little about Adam and Eve's daughters? It is one of the most important questions in Genesis. The answer begins with understanding the purpose of biblical genealogies. The Bible is not trying to record every historical detail. Instead, Scripture focuses on the unfolding relationship between God and humanity, especially the covenant line leading toward redemption. This is why Genesis emphasizes figures like Seth, Noah, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and eventually David. The central narrative follows the path that would lead to the coming of Christ. But this does not mean women were unimportant. Far from it. Again and again throughout Scripture, women appear at critical moments in salvation history. Sarah, Rebecca, Ruth, Esther, Mary. The biblical story could not exist without them, yet ancient cultures often recorded history through male genealogies. Women remained present but less frequently named. This pattern appears not only in Israel, but throughout the ancient Near East. Still, Genesis quietly leaves clues that women mattered profoundly. When Genesis 5:4 mentions sons and daughters, it acknowledges a vast hidden world behind the text. Entire lives existed between the lines. Families loved, suffered, celebrated, and mourned, while Scripture moved quickly through centuries. The daughters of Adam and Eve belong to this hidden world, and perhaps there is something deeply human about that. Most people throughout history never become famous. Most names disappear with time, yet their lives still matter. Their faithfulness still shapes future generations. The forgotten daughters of Genesis remind us that history is often carried not only by kings and prophets, but by ordinary people whose names survive only in heaven. Ancient traditions like the Book of Jubilees attempted to recover some of these lost names because people naturally longed to know more about humanity's first women. Who comforted Eve after Abel died? Who cared for aging Adam? Who preserved stories of Eden for younger generations? Who survived long enough to see humanity spread across the earth? The Bible remains mostly silent, but perhaps the silence itself invites reflection. God saw lives the world forgot, and even unnamed women played essential roles in His plan. The daughters of Adam and Eve may have vanished from recorded history, but their legacy surrounds us every day. Every nation, every language, every family on earth traces back to those first mothers born east of Eden. Their blood flows through human history itself. And though their names faded from memory, their existence proves something powerful. No life is insignificant in the eyes of God. The daughters of Adam and Eve remain among the most mysterious figures in all biblical history. Scripture gives us almost no details, no long speeches, no dramatic narratives, no monuments. And yet without them, humanity would never exist. They stood at the beginning of every civilization, every tribe, every nation. They experienced humanity's first joys and first sorrows. They saw the aftermath of Eden. They witnessed the rise of sin. They endured the pain of death entering the world. And through it all, they continued carrying life forward. The world forgot their names, but God did not. This pattern appears throughout Scripture again and again. God notices people others overlook: the barren woman, the grieving mother, the unnamed servant, the forgotten widow. Human history often celebrates conquerors and kings, but heaven sees hidden faithfulness. The daughters of Adam and Eve remind us that even unseen lives shape eternity. Some ancient traditions tried to preserve names like Awan and Azura because people sensed there had to be more to the story than Genesis revealed openly. Whether every tradition is historically accurate cannot be fully proven, but the deeper truth remains undeniable. The first women after Eve helped build humanity itself. And perhaps one reason Scripture leaves so much mystery is because these women represent all forgotten generations throughout history. The countless mothers who sacrificed for children, the women whose stories were never written down, the faithful souls who carried families through suffering while history remembered someone else. Yet, God sees every hidden life. Psalm 139 declares that every human being is fearfully and wonderfully made. That includes the unnamed daughters born east of Eden. And maybe that is the final lesson hidden inside this ancient mystery. The Bible is not merely the story of famous people. It is the story of humanity. Broken humanity, hopeful humanity, redeemable humanity. The daughters of Adam and Eve stand silently at the beginning of that story, reminding us that even forgotten people can shape the destiny of the world. And somewhere beyond the silence of Genesis, beyond the missing names, beyond the shadows of Eden, their legacy still lives in every human being alive today, because every family on earth began with them. As we close this journey into the forgotten daughters of Adam and Eve, one truth quietly remains. God remembers the people history forgets. The world may overlook hidden lives, unnamed sacrifices, and silent faithfulness, but heaven never does. The daughters born east of Eden carried humanity through grief, loss, fear, and uncertainty, and somehow, through all the darkness, God still guided His purpose forward. And maybe that speaks to your life too. Maybe you felt unseen, overlooked, or uncertain about where your story is leading. But the same God who walked with Adam and Eve still watches over His children today. Psalm 139:1 says, "O Lord, Thou hast searched me and known me." And Isaiah 41:10 declares, "Fear thou not, for I am with thee. Be not dismayed, for I am thy God. I will strengthen thee, yea, I will help thee." May God protect your heart, give you wisdom in uncertain seasons, and surround your life with peace that cannot be shaken. May He remind you that even in silence, He is near. And perhaps somewhere beyond the mysteries of Eden, beyond the forgotten names of Genesis, God is still writing a story greater than we can see. Thank you for watching The Thinking Faculty. And until next time, keep seeking the hidden depths of truth. Thanks for watching. If this opened your eyes even a little, don't let it end here. Tap subscribe, leave a like, and share with someone who needs it. I will love to hear your thought. Drop a comment below.